Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. And today, I'd like to share with you about how you can defeat work from home burnout and Zoom fatigue. Work from home burnout and Zoom fatigue. With this pandemic, there have been so many more people working from home and suffering from Zoom fatigue. We'll talk about what Zoom fatigue is, if you haven't heard of that term. The work from home burnout has been a tough thing for so many people. And we'll talk about how you can defeat it both for your team, for yourself, for everyone in your workplace, and if you're a solopreneur, just individually for yourself and not for your team. So that's what we'll talk about, how to defeat work from home burnout and Zoom fatigue. So the first thing to understand about work from home burnout and Zoom fatigue is the typical approaches to it. How do people typically deal with work from home? Well, at the beginning of the pandemic, with all the lockdowns, what happened was that folks just adapted their existing ways of working working in the office, their office culture, to remote work. That's what everyone did. They adapted their culture of working from home, working in the office culture, to remote work, and they didn't think about the differences between working from home and office culture, working in the office. So they used operational tactics to solve challenges that they encountered, whether it was work from home burnout or any other challenges, technological challenges, collaboration challenges. They just used tactics, day-to-day tactics. Operational tactics means just day-to-day stuff. As a challenge comes up, we'll address it. Another challenge comes up, we'll address it. That's how it was approached, because everyone wanted to just deal with the pandemic lockdowns. Folks weren't prepared. They just quickly changed to working from home and didn't think about the broader issues, the broader challenges with transitioning from the office to the home place. That's fine for emergencies, for a week, for two, to have that transition, just focusing on the tasks themselves, getting them done, focusing on that, and as any challenges come up, dealing with them operationally. But it's really bad for the long term. And of course, the pandemic is for the long term. And it's not simply the pandemic. Now that people have been working from home for a while, employers have been widely figuring out that, hey, work from home is not too bad. And so have employees and employers. From an employee perspective, it gives a lot more flexibility and comfort, and you don't have to have the long commute. There's less stress in many ways. Well, for employers, they, of course, have seen that many people working from home actually have more productivity than they had in the office, like 2 or more hours per week on average gain in productivity, which is great. That's a great gain in productivity. And if they can get more employees to work from home, of course, they get to not least expensive office space. So that's great for their savings and not use up a bunch of office services, whether, those big office copiers, other things that you need in the office, janitors, security, and so on. If you can shrink your footprint by 90%, even fully remotely, a number of companies have went to fully remote, large ones like Dropbox and so on. And a number of other ones have gone to, lots of their positions have moved remotely, including not simply technology companies like Dropbox, but Nationwide Insurance, a long-time company found 1926. So both old-time companies and newer ones have been deciding to make a number of permanent shifts to working from home. But they have not really figured out, they have not considered all the aspects of moving from their office culture to remote work. And they have tried to fit their existing office culture to remote work. Unfortunately, that's like forcing a square peg into a round hole. You can do it, but you'll break off the corners on the square peg, and it'll wobble a lot if you force it into the round hole, and eventually it'll break because you're keeping the aspects of the work that need to be done, the tasks, but you're leaving behind the social, the human glue, the community glue that bonded us together, that emotional glue that bonded us into the office culture. When you're switching to working from home without adapting those cultural elements effectively to the remote setting. So this is the problem of these are the problems of the typical approach to working from home. You're failing to address the basic differences of working from home. And even though people on average are more productive at working from home and they like it more. They like the flexibility. I've seen so many, I've worked with a number of companies that are transitioning to mostly or permanently working from home throughout not simply the pandemic, but even afterward, but even the pandemic. A number of companies are thinking, okay, we'll work from home during the pandemic, which is still going to go on for a long time. And they're not thinking about, they're thinking, hey, this is great. We can ideally permanently move to a number of positions or all positions to working from home, not having to have that expensive real estate, having more productivity, not having to have a lot of expensive business services, office services that they have to use. But they've been finding that it does lead to more burnout. Definitely issues with retention, morale, engagement. So burnout is problematic. It harms productivity from the perspective of collaboration. Individually, people are more productive, but as a team, there's definitely more tensions and challenges with teamwork where people are not as able to collaborate together effectively. So work from home, to have effective work from home, you really need a strategic approach. Can't just address operational challenges, can't do it by day-to-day tactics. You need to have a strategic shift, a strategic approach to working from home. And again, this is whether you're a team leader or a team member or a solopreneur, individual professional, you need to have a strategic approach to working from home. So there are a number of ways of solving the problems that are associated with working from home. I'll talk from the perspective of leaders, but you can apply it to yourself as a solopreneur or a team member, the kind of things that you really want to do. And to the extent that you're a team member, encourage your leaders to adopt these approaches. So, solution one to the problems of working from home. You want to gather information on what exactly are the problems in your company. All companies have some differences, many similarities, which I'll talk about, but also some differences. And you want to customize the approaches that I'm talking about here to your company. So your first step of your solution will be gathering work from home information, diagnose the issues with your company, use a number of surveys, use focus groups, use one-on-one interviews. These various tools, surveys, focus groups, and one-on-one interviews will help you diagnose the specific issues that your company is experiencing, that your team, your organization is experiencing with working from home. So that's the first solution. The second one is you want to develop metrics and baselines. As you're thinking about developing surveys and doing interviews, doing focus groups, make sure that you get both quantitative data and qualitative data. Quantitative data and qualitative data. So for the surveys especially, you want to structure them so that you get clear metrics, so that you can do interventions and measure the before and after impact. So that you have a survey talking about, let's say, how engaged do you feel? How good is your collaboration with team members? What are your work-life boundaries? And a number of other questions that there's going to be notes in the links in the show notes for more information about the kind of survey questions you can ask. But you want to structure the survey to get clear metrics so that you establish a baseline, use that baseline for your first evaluation, and then as you do interventions to improve the experience of your team working from home, you can use the survey, run the survey again, monthly or so, as you're going through these interventions, and see how the metrics are changing from that baseline. So people had, let's say, certain work-life boundaries that they felt a level of satisfaction of 6 out of 1 through 10. As you're with 1 low, 10 high. As you're improving their ability to have good work-life boundaries, are they moving from 6 to 7 or 7 to 8? So you want to see that. What about how they're collaborating with others? If they say we're 4 in collaboration, which I've definitely seen a lot of things like that, kind of in the lower scores, unfortunately, in collaboration, because it's hard to collaborate when you're working from home, and virtual communication as well. 5 in effective virtual communication. Are you moving from that 4 and 5 to those 6s and 7s, and over time, ideally 8s and 9s, and even 10s? So you want to see that happening. Now, the third thing, here we're going into more of the behavioral science, the cognitive neuroscience of this topic. What is actually going on within us that is causing us a lot of problems in working from home? Well, what happened is that work as such, going back before the pandemic when people were working in the office, it satisfies a whole bunch of our psychological needs. And this is might feel soft, might feel, squishy topics, but humans are soft and squishy. And in order to get humans satisfied and prevent burnout, and to get them engaged and collaborating effectively, you need to realize that in the office work naturally fulfills our needs. We are tribal creatures, and we need to engage with other people in order to feel fulfilled and satisfied. We're also creatures driven by a sense of meaning and purpose, and we need to have a sense of meaning and purpose in the kind of things that we do, the kind of activities that we accomplish in the office, in order to really be satisfied and protect ourselves from burnout and fatigue of various sorts and collaboration problems. And that's been lost. A lot of it has been lost in the transition to working from home. The meaning and purpose, the connection with the community. And most employees are not aware of this. Most employers aren't aware of this. They don't understand how work met the basic psychological needs of their employees, and employees don't understand how it met their basic psychological needs. And they kind of didn't have to when it would just happen naturally in the office. Of course, it would have been much better, and I did work with companies on developing meaning and purpose in the workplace and sense of connection, but it was not as necessary, really, in the office. It wasn't as critically important when you were in the office, because especially in kind of smaller companies, it happened more naturally. In larger companies, it required more work when you have that complex tribal systems. But most employees are not aware of how the transition to working from home disrupted all of that and how it's very difficult. So this disrupted satisfaction of our needs, and that's why workers feel unfulfilled, much less fulfilled by working from home. Their meaning and purpose, their sense of connection, community with others, their sense of trust, their sense of collaboration, it's unfulfilled. And they're confused about it. They're not sure, why is this so challenging? And of course, they're associating that with the company, with their workplace, rather than the circumstances. And that is a problem that you don't want to have happen. So you want to educate employees about this topic as one of the early interventions. Once you gather that surveys, the metrics, the baselines, educate your employees about this topic. It's incredibly important to do so. Next, what you want to do is you want to cultivate a sense of meaning and purpose in the workplace. So talked about meaning and purpose being incredibly important in the workplace, that sense of identity, that sense of who I am, why I'm here, why I'm doing what I'm doing, what is driving me, what is meaningful about this for me. People have done that more naturally in the office. They have associated their sense of meaning and purpose with the place, with the working there, and with the people they're surrounded by. So driven by people, motivated by people, driven by the place, motivated by the place. They have that association of the context of work with meaning and purpose, with satisfaction, with accomplishments. A lot of that is greatly disrupted. That's all greatly disrupted when you move to work from home. So you need to change that. You need to help your employees and yourself develop that sense of meaning and purpose in working from home intentionally. It's much harder to do so because the context of the home is not something people associate with working. That's not something they associate with driving their accomplishments and achievements. Their accomplishments and achievements, they associate that mainly with the workplace, or most people associate their accomplishments, their achievements, what's driving them, their powering force with the workplace. So they need to change that. You need to help them change that context, that thinking, to associate working from home with meaning and purpose. The first step is to use an evaluative tool, and there are a number of evaluative tools. One's going to be linked in the show notes, to set a baseline of meaning. Set a baseline of meaning and purpose for your employees. Then engage in a number of self-reflective activities on meaning and work from home. This is a science-based strategy to actually develop work from home. You want to have meaning in work from home. You want to have self-reflective activities where people do various forms of journaling, do various forms of self-reflection on how working from home in the company, in the nonprofit, whatever organization you run, helps them develop their sense of meaning and purpose, so that they shift the context of their previous meaning and purpose in working in the office to their new context of working from home, however temporary or long-term or permanent it might be. Then The second step here is to connect work from home to something bigger than themselves to develop a sense of meaning and purpose. That can be, part of that will be the work community, and we'll talk about that next, but you also want to associate that with something bigger, some bigger drive, some bigger goals, some bigger values. What does the company stand for? What does your nonprofit organization stand for? What is the goal that you're trying to achieve and accomplish? Now, you've probably done that pretty well when people are in the office, reinforcing the culture, the values, the mission. But that's much harder to do when people are working from home and they don't feel nearly as connected to the company's value, to the organization's values, culture, mission. So that needs to be something that's worked on for people in their homes, and they need to have that association with the value system, culture of the organization in which they work, connection to something bigger than themselves. What are they serving? What are they doing? Then the next one, connected to the connection to something bigger than yourself, is to cultivate mutual connections to the work community. And that not only helps fulfill your sense of meaning and purpose, but also your desire for a tribal connection. Humans our gut intuitions, our emotions evolved not for the modern environment, but for the savannah environment when we lived in small tribes of 15 people to 150 people. So that's very important for us to have that connection to other people, to see that connection. And our workplace for most people is our main tribe. Of course, the family unit is our nuclear tribe for the large majority of people, but that's not the bigger tribe. I'm not talking about the nuclear family. I'm talking about the tribal sensibility. Who is your community? For most people, their work is their main community. And that's been largely disrupted by working from home. It's very hard to connect to each other through small boxes on a screen on a video conference, and even worse, of course, through collaborative software, which is incredibly needed. I hope you're using collaborative software like Trello, Asana, Microsoft Teams, Slack, much better than email. But it's very hard to connect effectively to other people through it, to really feel they're human beings, and for them to feel that you're a human being. Now, that discontent leads to emotional drain. What happens with the video conference especially is that we expect to feel connected. I mean, think about work meetings or work social functions, those happy hours in the workplace, not Zoom happy hours. You feel connected, you chat to others, you feel that this is part of my tribe. I know this person, I know what's going on in their life, I'm connected to them, they like me, I like them, I support them, they support me. But when you have those same interactions in a video conference, it just doesn't work very well at all. Our gut intuitions, our emotions don't feel nearly as connected by those professional meetings, by those happy hours. We have an expectation. Our emotions, our intuitions have a high expectation for feeling connected because we are used to it from the office. But we don't feel nearly as connected. So we feel drained. You can be much more drained when you're just sitting in your home office and having meetings all day through Zoom than when you're at work and having those meetings all day at work. And you wonder, why is that? That's so weird, 9 to 5 doing the same thing. I mean, I don't even have the commute when I'm going to work and going back. But you just have so much more drain because being with other people, having those meetings, for most people, except extreme introverts, for most people, it's at least somewhat energizing. It's somewhat energizing. It helps you give that sense of connection. It helps you feed positively off the energy of other people, and they feed off your energy. So you bounce positive energy off each other, and you help each other feel more energized, feel more motivated, feel connected, feel engaged, feel like you're part of the tribe. Doesn't really happen nearly so much on a Zoom professional meeting or especially on a Zoom happy hour. Those are notoriously bad for actually helping connect people. So you need to replace that office culture style bonding activities. Zoom happy hours, professional, team meetings. Much of that does not work well, especially the happy hours, especially where we have expectations for happy hour activities that connect us that really are not connecting. So you really need to do away with those. Sorry for those who like Zoom happy hours, the vast majority of us don't. You want to replace that office-style culture bonding with native virtual formats where people don't have expectations. We don't have those intuitive expectations of satisfaction. with native virtual formats that are virtual in nature and aren't associated with office culture. But they help us feel connected. So it's much better than having a high expectation and being disappointed. A couple of examples that you want to use. One is a text-based morning update. So each team in your collaboration software, whether it's Trello, you can use a Trello card, whether it's Slack or whether it's Mondays or Asana or Microsoft Teams, you can use a channel there, everyone, whatever it is. For your team, so a team of 6 to 8 people, of course, that's what I'm talking about. You usually have the team and you have a number of conversations going on, let's say in Microsoft Teams. And you can establish additional channels to converse about other topics. So you want to have a channel specifically devoted to just personal stuff, nothing work related. And on that channel, every morning, everyone who comes signs into work. So the first thing they do is essentially checking into work and checking in with other people, saying hi to other people. This is a morning update. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to do, where what you do is you share 5 things about each other. How are you feeling overall? What's your mood right now? Then what are you planning? What's been going on with you at home? Then what are you planning to do at work that day? And share one thing about you that most team members don't know. That is something that you can easily do. Takes less than 5 minutes to do that part. Share that, and everyone can see it. And then you respond to 3 other people, and that takes again a couple of minutes. So this whole thing takes 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how extensive you want to be, and that gets you really engaged with others because you not only share about yourself and you humanize yourself, you remind your team members that you're a human being, but you also see their updates, what's going on with them, with their kids, with their faith-based groups or values-based groups, what's going on with their vacation plans, hopefully safe and socially distanced vacations, and other sorts of things like this. Well, what are you going, maybe they're doing their spring planting or something like this. So what's going on? And share photos if you can, share videos. Those are great for humanizing each other. So that's really important, and that should be obligatory. All team members must do this. This is an obligatory step. Then the other thing you should do with the same channel is personal chats. So that's a personal chats where you can personally chat. You can also establish separate channels. It depends. Some teams like to do it on separate channels. Some team like to do the text-based morning update in the same channel. It also depends on what kind of collaboration software you're using. But you want a channel or a Trello card or something like this for personal chats as well. And that's completely optional. People can use that or not use that. Just chat, exchange with each other, share something that's going on with them, things that are just life stuff, nothing about work. So that's a personal chat. And that gives a nice balance of an obligatory humanizing activity with the morning update and those personal chats that people can do voluntarily. And you'll find that the more extroverted people use the personal chats more and the more introverted ones use them less, and that's totally fine. Next. Virtual communication. So we're going on to professional development. Satisfaction of psychological needs we've addressed. Now we're going on to addressing professional development. Now, communication is notoriously hard, which is why even before the pandemic, people in communication training made a lot of money. And it's even harder to communicate effectively online. Yet companies and individuals are failing so badly at investing into professional development in this area. This is, one of the biggest opportunities for improvement, communicating effectively virtually. Again, it's so much harder than doing it in person, where we obviously are used to doing it. But companies aren't investing in this. Organizations aren't investing in this. Individuals, professionals aren't investing in it. And that's just silly. For example, I'll give an example. In your Zoom video conference, when you're looking at the other person on the screen, did you know that you're not looking them in the eye? In order to look them in the eye, you need to look at the video camera. So you look at the video camera, not on the screen, look in the video camera, not on the screen, it looks really different. When you look in the video camera, the other person can clearly see that you're looking at them, you're looking them in the eye. Whereas if they're looking at the screen, they're looking at you, but you're not seeing them as though they're looking you in the eye. And that is really bad for influencing people. You want that eye contact. Eye contact is so incredibly important for us to influence people. I'm sure you know that. You've gotten some in-person communication training where you know that eye contact is very, very important. Handshake, eye contact, right? Two basics. Well, no handshakes right now in the pandemic, but eye contact, so important. And we're failing abysmally at eye contact. Your sales team people are not doing eye contact. I mean, I've spoken to so many top sales managers in a number of companies who did not know about this before I talked to them, and who are like, oh, so we're failing to make sales because of this simple thing that we're not able to do. Or people, obviously, if you're inside the company, if you're not interacting with people outside the company, you're still selling your ideas. You're still trying to influence them and persuade them to do something. As a leader, as a team member, and if you're not having eye contact with them, you're much less capable of persuading them. That's just one example. The other example, much more obvious, is failure to see people's body tones and language. That you're only hearing what they're saying. You're seeing their face sometimes. I mean, let's say lots of our communication right now is happening through Trello, Microsoft Teams, other sorts of things. And that text-based communication is not conveying body language, not conveying tone. It's very different things if I say, I think Michael should take that project. Or if I say, I think Michael should take that project. Those two sentences mean very different things because of the nuance of the phrasing and the tone that I'm using. But when written down, they mean the same thing. And that doesn't really convey what you're trying to convey, those undertones, emotional undertones that convey so much, that body language that conveys so much. And even if you're doing video conference, of course, you're not seeing other people's body language nearly as much. You're only seeing their face. And their face tells quite a bit, but it often doesn't. You're not seeing their body, you're not seeing other things that they're doing, and the tone may not be coming through very clearly at all. Lots of people have surprisingly bad microphones, even highly professional people, top leader who can easily afford, $40, $50 microphone. Get yourself a Yeti microphone, get yourself a good quality microphone, but people don't, and it's ridiculous. And you can barely hear them. They're using their inbuilt microphones or something like that, or their headphone microphones, which is not nearly good enough for top quality, for conveying your message effectively. And that causes a lot of miscommunications, misunderstandings that can blow up quickly and cause a lot of problems for teams when you're working within a team internally within a company, and externally when you're working with everyone from your vendors to your clients to your investors. Bad idea. You want to provide training on effective virtual communication. I can't tell you the number of companies that are not doing this, and that's very silly. Related to that, you want to provide training on effective virtual collaboration. Again, lots of trainers made money by training people on teamwork before the pandemic in office, and when it's much more natural for us to work as a team tribally. But right now, companies aren't investing in this, and organizations aren't investing in this, individuals are not investing in this. It's ridiculous. We're used to that collaboration in office settings. We build up trust with each other naturally. We meet in the break room and, have lunch together and just chat about our lives and what's going on and how are you feeling. We meet in the hallways and we can resolve small problems, issues, challenges pretty quickly. That doesn't happen in virtual settings. Most employees don't collaborate effectively. They don't know how to collaborate effectively in virtual settings, how to communicate effectively, how to collaborate effectively. Everything from technology issues, not knowing all the technology of Microsoft Teams, Trello, Slack, whatever, to simply how to communicate and how to delegate tasks effectively in office, in work from home settings, how to hold other people accountable. It's much easier to ignore somebody sending you a Slack message than it is somebody standing in the door to your cubicle. So this poor collaboration really harms people's morale, their retention of people in your company, and their productivity as part of a team. Individually, people are more productive, but team productivity is really hurt by this poor collaboration. And there's training that you can do in effective virtual collaboration. I'm so surprised how few organizations do training in effective virtual collaboration. Then, a couple of other things you can do. You want to initiate virtual mentorship. This is a really effective technique. You might have had mentorship before in the office, and a lot of that has slipped as people transition to working from home. This is specifically virtual mentorship. You want to program a virtual mentorship where you pair up junior staff with senior team members. So focus on pairing up those junior staff with senior team members, which provides them with another way to socialize with each other, have that connection. So it's especially important in these times to have that connection, that one-on-one connection. So giving them that opportunity. And of course, senior staff members can mentor younger ones in the workplace and doing the work. And that's just one of the biggest things that employees report being lost and harmed, is their ability to get mentoring from others. And that is a big, big problem. So you want to deliberately create that virtual mentorship. And that older staff will mentor younger ones on what to do, things in the company and so on, as well as the internal culture, norms, politics, all that stuff. And don't tell me you don't have politics in your organization. Pretty much everyone does, unless you're a solopreneur. And then junior staff, and this is a little dirty secret, that a lot of older staff, senior staff, don't know how to do technology very well. Unfortunately, but this is true, and they don't take the time to invest into learning how to do technology very well. This harms them, and this is really damaging, but this is the case. When they have junior staff with whom they're mentoring, junior staff can notice that and say, hey, did you know you can do this in an easier way? And the senior staff can more easily accept that from junior staff because they're helping junior staff with other things. So it's kind of feels like a reciprocity arrangement. It is a reciprocity arrangement. So you want to make sure to do that virtual mentorship for junior staff and senior staff alike, benefiting both. Then you want to establish digital co-working. Digital co-working is a surprisingly effective technique and not done nearly enough. What you want to do is replicate the benefits of shared cubicle space. That's the benefit of digital co-working, where in cubicle space you can easily chat to somebody in the next cubicle or come over to them briefly, and if they're in a cubicle a little bit further away, and chat to them, about what's going on with them, what are the issues, you want to answer a question, or just, chat about socially very briefly, hopefully not taking up too much of somebody's time, but, a couple of minutes about how's life, how are you feeling, all that stuff. So the digital co-working allows you to replicate the benefits of working alongside team members in solving work problems and actually benefiting from listening to them, just observing them work to the extent that you can do that in some ways, and also chatting to them and bonding. To do that, teams of 6 to 8 people should do a video call for at least 1 hour daily. Ideally more, depends on what kind of work you're doing, but ideally more than 1 hour daily, where you have microphones turned off, speakers turned on, and video optional. And you can, of course, and should, of course, turn your microphones on to bond with each other, share about something in your life, what's going on, chat a little bit briefly, chat about work stuff, what's going on, ask questions, answer questions, do all those sorts of things. So that's very effective. That's a really effective technique that digital co-working bonds team members with each other, reminds them that they're human, helps them feel connected. Very, very valuable. And of course, helps them solve work problems, addresses some of those collaboration challenges, as does the virtual mentorship. This is especially helpful for those who are in positions like sales, where sales team members can use that to hear each other. You can have one sales team member at a time have their microphone turned on, especially a senior sales team member, when they're doing outbound or inbound calls to customers. And you can hear what other team members are saying to customers and learn from them, and or give them feedback on how they can do better. So with a number of specific departments in your organization, I'm the sales floor. I have to tell you, sales teams so often tell me, sales team leaders, that that's the biggest thing they miss. That sales floor interaction, learning from each other, engagement, and mutual motivation for doing sales, and the wins, celebrating the wins, and so on. That is something you can replicate with digital co-working, and that's really effective. And that applies to a number of specific departments in your organization. Then, let's go on to other things that you can be doing. You really want to fund people's remote work. Technology, office space limitations have been so problematic for many people. Many people don't, they work in their kitchen table or a walk-in closet. It's true, people do. And they don't have a quiet space. They don't have a quiet office. The technology is weird. I mentioned not having a good microphone, not having a good webcam, not having good setups, not having good equipment, not having good technology. That is a big problem. Not having good internet connection. I mean, how many people's Wi-Fi, is bad and drops out, and they have to drop out of a meeting because of bad Wi-Fi? That should never happen. You should always be plugged into the Ethernet, and there are ways to get Ethernet extended, but it costs some money. So you want to help your employees with these technology office space limitations by providing funds for good home office setup. Whether it's the internet connection that I mentioned, various equipment, technology, not simply a good laptop, but also microphone, camera, all that sort of thing, and furniture. So furniture for working from home, all those sorts of things. Maybe a standing desk, because it's not really healthy. I use a standing desk. I've been using that for like 7 years now, ever since the research showing how unhealthy it is to actually sit the whole day. And when we're working in the office and we have meetings or so on, we're at least walking from place to place. When we're working from home, we can sit in the same chair 9 to 5, just except getting up and getting lunch. It's not great, not healthy. So you want to provide appropriate furniture, comfortable, ergonomic furniture, ideally ones that facilitate the best health, like standing up for working from home. Then, this is another thing that you really want to be thinking about. A lot of people are not getting nearly as much benefit from meetings as you think they are. Because of this disappointment, this Zoom fatigue, we expect to be connected and we are not. So whether those virtual happy hours, you want to completely eliminate them, and you want to reduce unnecessary team meetings. Partially because you're already doing digital co-working. So if you feel, lots of leaders feel that team meetings are important for them to connect with their team members. But if you're doing digital co-working, which you really should, you will be already connected, much more connecting than meetings. And it's something that that you don't have that expectation of being connected. So you don't have that Zoom fatigue from those digital co-working because you don't have that expectation of connectedness. I mean, you don't rationally have that expectation. It's emotions and it's our intuitions that causes Zoom fatigue. And so if you have those microphones off, speakers on, video optional, digital co-working for at least an hour a day, you spend much more time together, much more connected, and you will be much less drained than if you have those weekly team meetings or something like that. You don't think that things are urgent that you need to communicate. You want to only schedule important meetings, and those shouldn't happen more than once a month if you're a regular team. Once a week for leadership teams because you need to coordinate, but generally speaking, once a month or less for regular teams. When topics need to be really hashed out, that's what you want to schedule meetings for. So the hashing out those topics, once a month for a regular team to set a strategy for the next month or three going forward, right? That's cool, but don't have them more often. For reports, when you want to get teams reports, you want to use asynchronous communication. So have team members get you written reports and send them to each other. You can also have them do video reports. Those are more connecting and more engaging. And what you can do is do software transcription, very cheap, of video reports that will then be sent out with the written reports for anyone who prefers the transcribed version, and which is easier to catalog and search and so on for yourself. But the video reports are especially useful, I find, because they humanize each other to each other. Convenient and much less draining for team members because they can watch those video reports or read the transcribed / written reports on their own time. So much more convenient, much less draining. As a leader, however, you want to make sure to do a weekly check-in with each of your direct reports. So assess them weekly, do a weekly check-in on what's going on. That helps ensure trust and accountability for yourself with the team member. If you're a team member, that helps assure that you have trust and accountability with the team leader. So make sure to do that. Assess your direct reports weekly in weekly meetings. These should be not very long. This is just, and again, don't do this in team meetings. Don't do team meetings with your check-ins. Do individual things. That's more connecting, less draining, and there's going to be less awkwardness, and people will be freer to talk about things that might be challenging to talk about in a team setting. This should be 15 to 30 minutes, regularly 15 minutes. If there are more issues to talk through, it can go up as long as 30, but I've usually see them be 15, even 10 minutes video conference. So what you want to check in is the status of their work, of course, naturally. Then their work-life balance, because that's really important for addressing burnout, and their well-being, which is also important for addressing burnout. So those are the things that you want to check on in your weekly meetings with your direct reports. As a leader, it's critical for you to support work-life boundaries. That's one of the biggest issues that causes burnout, poor work-life boundaries. Now, many leaders, way too many, expect their employees to work after office hours. They send messages in collaboration software and after work hours, and they ask their employees why they didn't respond to them after work hours when their employees respond to them during work hours. That's so bad. That's so harmful. That's very damaging for people. It means that they have to be on, 24/7 or whatever. It's really, really bad. You do not want that situation. You want them to separate work from life. So work from life boundaries, if they don't do that, that really harms them, and that contributes a lot to burnout. So they don't have that expectation. In fact, you want to encourage them not to do that. There are many fearful employees who don't complain about these things, and many even take initiative on themselves. They're afraid of losing their job in the pandemic, this economic downturn. They see their boss working after hours, and even if their boss doesn't directly say, hey, you should respond to these messages even after hours when the boss sends them an email, there's a sense, there's an expectation. They feel that, well, if they don't work after office hours and they don't quickly respond to the boss's email after office hours, that will set them back, and the boss will feel that they're not as productive an employee. That's not a good thing, that they're not as loyal. You don't want that situation. You want to reinforce saying that, if you want to work after office hours as a leader yourself, if you choose to do that, that's okay, but you should make very clear that you have no expectations, and people will not get brownie points if they work after office hours. So you should reinforce those boundaries. Be very, very clear about that. Also, separately, as an additional bonus, you want to encourage flexible work schedules when possible. So the typical work schedule is 9 to 5. What ideally you would do is establish a common time when everyone has to be at work, something like 12 to 3. And that's when you would do your digital co-working, let's say from 1 to 3. So if you do an hour, you can do 1 to 2, or if you're doing 2 hours, 1 to 3, something like that. So you give people flexibility on when they work. That gives them flexibility for working from home, accommodating things with their kids, with their family members, with activities that they want to do or need to do. So that helps them have better work-life balance, and that's something you should contribute to and encourage. This is key to avoiding burnout. A lot of research has shown that work-life balance is so important to addressing burnout. And finally, as you're integrating these changes, don't rush them. Don't put them in everything at once. That's a problem. You want to put them in slowly over time. So don't rush these things. Use the results of the survey to see what is the most important things for you. And always, whatever the results of the survey, I strongly recommend that you start with educating people about their basic psychological needs. Because if they're not aware of these things, of these issues, which the vast majority of them are not, then they really can't address these things on the survey, right? They can't say that that's an issue that they're suffering from. So you start with education about basic psychological needs, and then proceed to the most urgent steps of the other things. based on the internal surveys. What seems most urgent of everything else based on your internal surveys. So that's what you want to do. Then you want to examine the survey results over time. So I told you, do the metrics, do the baseline, start the intervention with education, then the urgent steps, and then rerun the survey every month. See how your interventions are doing and see where you want to build on next. Strategizing next steps each month with the leadership teams on the kind of next step intervention that you'll be doing to address and overcome work from home burnout and Zoom fatigue. All right, everyone. I hope this has been enlightening for you and it has helped you make better decisions about work from home burnout and Zoom fatigue. There will be much more information in the show notes. So click on the show notes. There will be various links to various resources on defeating work from home burnout and Zoom fatigue. Make sure to click like on this show and to follow us on whatever channel you've been listening to us. There's a video cast, there's a podcast. Podcast is on iTunes and other podcast channels. The video cast is on YouTube, so check that out. Make sure to follow us and subscribe, whatever the relevant things is in each one. And please leave a review on iTunes. It's so important for us to get the word out to other people and for us to know what helps you have the best experience so that we can produce the best content for you. Similarly, on YouTube, please leave a comment and share with us your thoughts about this episode. And again, what you'll gain from it, how we can make it better. That's very important and valuable. All right, everyone. I hope this has proven useful to you, and I will see you on the next episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. In the meantime, as always, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.